Hey, you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything that we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I am one of your hosts, Cameron Hawkins, and with me, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing again?
Uh,
This is the second episode recording tonight.
yeah, we're recording 3 episodes in a row for folks that are listening, maybe in not the same order. This is the second one, and we'll see what order they go up in. But I am doing as well as last time, which is good.
Good.
Bouncing back from the trip and everything, and excited. Honestly, of the three things we're recording, I feel like this is the one I'm maybe the most excited to talk about. Because this
Interesting.
is
Okay.
everything we saw from Capcom. Because you and I both got to have a little extra look at some of their stuff coming up.
Yeah, so we got to see three things. In order, we got to see Onimusha live gameplay by one of the producers at Capcom. We got to see a pre-recorded, pre-edited showcase of Resident Evil Requiem. And then we also got to go hands-on with Pragmata on the PS5. Um, we're gonna go in order with things. We're gonna talk about Onimusha Way of the Sword. Kevin, you are the Onimusha Resident Evil guy here, so I'm gonna let you kind of take the reins on this
Yeah.
and share us your thoughts on Onimusha.
Sure. So, yeah, again, as you said, for Onimusha, we did see it in, it was a live gameplay demo. So this was not a pre-recorded video we watched. It was one of the devs was just right there playing the game live in front of us. So we got to see how good he was and the occasional little mistake he made. uh, we didn't go to the same session, right? We had different appointments.
No,
Yeah.
we had different
Did you
appointments.
have any fun slip ups or anything during his gameplay? Was he flawless?
Yeah, he seemed pretty flawless.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was pretty flat. Yeah, he messed up like once for us, but it was like very minor. It was not a big deal. Uh, yeah, no, it's awesome to see in person. I hinted at this a little bit when talking about Onimusha during our kind of SGF Xbox wrap up. Something that I was very happy about seeing this game in action is the fact that one kind of little worry I had in the back of my brain about this game was whether or not this was going to be like kind of Capcom using an old IP to backdoor like we're making our Souls like, right? Because it's a game that I think within its setting and tone could very easily just be like we're doing a Souls like, and that is not the case. I think there is a little bit of Souls influence here. I think some of the things there are some lessons they took that are very popular from that genre, but it feels very much like an Onimusha game to me based on what we were seeing. Which is a little more, not necessarily the kind of tight, refined combo system that Devil May Cry has, but definitely a slightly faster character action game with its own quirks. Um, Before talking about the gameplay, one thing I want to note about real quick that stood out to me with my time watching it. Uh, Cam, do you know who Toshiro Mifune is?
Yes.
Okay, so they've talked about this a little bit with like the public releases and stuff. The main character in this game, they have based his likeness on Toshiro Mifune, who is arguably like the actor of like the black and white samurai film era. Like if you've watched Kurosawa films, you have seen him in stuff. The big names are things like Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, which is the sequel to that, and a bunch of other stuff. The Samurai trilogy, and so they are using his likeness to a degree. They're trying to recreate him a little bit. And one of the things I really loved about that is that it's very easy, I think, to be like, hey, we made this person look like this person. And cool. Congratulations. There's a likeness. Great. What I found very interesting was just watching the gameplay in action. I was like, oh no, shit. They are recreating like how Mifune like acted like there's this moment where he's kind of frustrated and thinking for a second, so he's scratching the back of his head and just kind of turns around and looks a bit around himself a little bit, and that's like 100% a move you would see Mifune do constantly in movies like that is just like I don't know if I would say it's like a signature thing he did, but it was absolutely like a reflex he would have for certain characters and roles. uh that was like, I just thought that was a really neat like detail that stood out to me, which was cool. uh, but from the gameplay side of things, uh, the structure is somewhat familiar to what you may have seen in past Onimusha titles. Action title, you're fighting the Genma when you run into them, but there are some light puzzle segments, a little bit of exploration going on. One of the things they did confirm right away in the gameplay that is kind of a series staple is the Isin, which is a one-hit kill move. Not a one-hit kill on bosses, sadly, but it takes out regular enemies very easily, and you can also get some good damage in otherwise. And this was one of the big things that really defined a lot of the older Onimusha games because it was basically the developer's goal of being like, hey, I don't want people to like get through this game by just mashing square. Like I want to give them a reason to like actually think a little bit. And so that mechanic in the old Onimusha games was, oh, if you hit the attack button right as an enemy is about to hit you, you do this dash slash that just takes them out. And so like, yeah, you can get through the game just spamming square if you want, but like real system mastery of this game and like speedrunning type stuff is like, no, you need to learn how to do the Isin. That's the real shit. And so it's made its comeback here in Way of the Sword. You still have that move. It's a little fancier looking this time around because, this game is coming out like 2 decades after the last Onimusha. Maybe not quite that long yet, but really cool looking. One of the things with it that I did have a question about is that they also expanded it to have like an AoE version where you Isin one guy and then it allows you to like dash over to another guy and hit him and then dash over to another guy and hit him. And they did like a 4 chain of it and like it looked cool. I am a little curious what the limitation is on that. Like, did you have to unlock that as a skill to do that? Like, is it just like the first hit was earned with like the skilled timing input, but then the other ones were just like, yeah, like just do square again, do square again. I'm curious if there's limits on that because it seemed like very strong to be able to do that. Um, but yeah, there were a lot of series staples. On the gameplay, we were seeing the main character mostly relied on just his sword, but he did have like a special move where he broke out a pair of like light daggers and did like a combo. That was pretty cool. Uh, I think one of the really interesting things that stood out from a combat perspective was environment interactivity. There were definitely some things you could mess with that were neat, like I forget what they're called, the mats that are on the floor, tatami mats. Uh, he did this move where he like stabbed his sword into it and pulled it up to use it as a shield against an enemy archer, and then he kicked it, launching it at him, sending him flying back. Super cool shit. I don't know if it's actually the most efficient thing to do in game. I don't care. Look cool as all hell. I want to do that now. uh, yeah, it's just everything we saw. I thought looked pretty good. I'm kind of floundering around a little bit, if I'm being honest, just trying to recall everything that I thought was awesome. Anything in particular, Cam, that you want to bring up that I haven't touched on just quite yet?
Yeah, so I mean, as someone who has not played an Onimusha game and honestly is not familiar with the gameplay and like the mechanics and really anything about how that game flows,
Sure.
um, I thought it looked fine.
Yeah,
Like I I wasn't I don't think it did a whole lot for me to see like, oh, this is why people love Onimusha.
sure.
And, granted, it was like a what, probably 30-minute demo.
Yeah, about a
Like
little less than I think.
and a little less than that. And a lot of it was just kind of walking around and just kind of like, oh, look at the environments, like look how good this game looks, like that type of thing
Yeah,
as well. Um we did get to see a boss fight. Um and that was cool, but also kind of felt like this kind of demo that was like set on easy difficulty so
sure.
that it could be shown off easier and that's kind of my issue. It's like, oh, this kind of seems like you just swing your sword and then and there's not there I just didn't see any real layers of the gameplay
Sure.
that I think that I needed to
Well,
be like, oh, this looks like
yeah.
incredible,
Yeah. Well, and that is definitely, I think, a problem that reviving a game like this runs into a little bit because when talking about why people loved Onimusha, it's not going to be for a lot of the reasons that became bigger in like later action games, right? Like the original Onimusha,
Mhm.
in all honesty, an okay action. It was basically Resident Evil with swords. Like you had fixed camera angles, you had like a very basic 3-hit combo, you got cool special moves that did a ton of damage. Not a particularly complex action game by any means. Like the Eason was really the big thing that was like their push, which was a cool thing, but like yeah, it's effectively an offensive parry that has a tighter window and you compare that to something like Devil May Cry, which was pushing what action games to do. That was like you have 17 different weapons that you're swapping in between and doing incredible combos to, land stuff. Like there was a
Yeah.
lot more focus on the action in those games, whereas Onimusha was like, hey, we got this one cool trick you can do, and it's cool, but certainly not nearly as complex, right? And so it's tough to be like, they're finally making a brand new one for PS5 and uh, for modern systems. And what are we going to bring back that people loved about the original? What people loved about the original was vibes, atmosphere, and like the general story and type of game that it was. Like I don't think on
Yeah.
like I can't look back at Onimusha and be like that was the pinnacle of action games of its time or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's tough to like establish that identity. I think for a brand new game moving forward. Uh, that said, uh, you know, I personally really enjoyed what I was seeing from the combat. I don't think it's necessarily breaking any barriers as far as introducing some wild new concept. There are some new things they mixed in that were kind of interesting. Like I think one of the things we saw was during the boss fights, you had this mechanic where, a la certain action games, you have like a posture meter for the opponent, and if you successfully hit them enough times and parry enough attacks, it breaks their stance. But instead of it just being like, cool, congrats, you now just did a bunch of damage in one strike, it gives you choices. So it's like, oh, target this weak spot or target this weak spot. And there are differences to what those impact. So, like, one weak spot
Okay.
might deal more damage, while another weak spot will do less damage, but also produce a bunch of souls, which can be not only currency for things,
Mm.
but can also, like, heal you. So if you're like, oh, crap, I'm low on health, the extra damage from hitting him in the head would be tempting, but I'm going to attack his gauntlet and get souls out of it because I need some yellow souls to heal me up right now. Which I thought was a really neat little kind of interesting flow and very cinematic too. Like, I will say that while the moment to moment action gameplay did seem somewhat straightforward, the visuals of it were very nice. I thought like the animations and everything like played
Yeah.
out beautifully.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just we have been not only have we been oversaturated with Souls games, we've also been oversaturated with uh Japanese era type games where it's like, hey, yeah, you're a dude with a sword,
What's
a katana, and
What's
it's just
hilarious
like,
about that is how untrue that was like 5 years ago, and like Japanese studios were afraid of doing that, and now it's like people are saying we have too many.
yeah, and so like I'm not saying again, like I'm not trying to say that every game of its kind needs to be like Sekiro for me. That's not the case. But I just feel like that even with a game like Ghost of Tsushima, right? I think Ghost of Tsushima was able to show me like, oh, here's the variety in the gameplay that you can experience. And not even in the stealth aspect, just of like the general like, oh, you have all these different stances that are effective against certain enemy types. And while like that all didn't translate well when I actually played the game in and of itself and I found like flaws there, I still like understood like, oh, this is what it's doing to differentiate itself
Right.
from these other games. And with Onimusha, like yes, the soul stuff is interesting with the gauntlet, but like we didn't see exactly why like well like, like we didn't see a skill tree or like, oh, where are these souls going to and like
Sure.
um and so for me, it was just like, yeah, this looks cool, and this looks interesting. You did not show me anything about what makes this game different from others outside of like the stuff that we already knew.
Sure.
Um, and what the series is already known for.
Yeah.
And I think that even though it is a reboot of the series, a reboot slash continuation after so many years, you still need to like show us like what you're doing to make it stand out outside of namesake.
Sure. No,
And that's what I'm missing from what I saw. Like, am I still like excited to check it out? Absolutely. But did it change my excitement level from where I was previously to after? Nope.
yeah. No, and that's a fair point. Like I do agree that uh again, like I think we're running into a situation right here where ultimately the thing that's being fallen back the most on is that it's Onimusha, right? Like I think they're falling back on the idea that we are bringing back this franchise that had a dedicated fan base for this specific era in games, and a lot of what we saw was highlighting how much it has in common with those older ones, right? To
Uh,
be honest, kind of my takeaway a little bit from what we saw was almost like uh, what's the word I want to use here? Uh, a reassurance that like, hey, like yes, it's been a while, and a lot has changed in the years between, and it's not like we're using the exact same staff or anything, but like this is an Onimusha game, and that was kind of the vibe I was getting a little bit from what we saw, and you're completely right in that I think there's a lot of additional context that was just not given, and things we don't really see in action just yet, that help it stand apart outside of the fact that it's Onimusha is back. Um, and that's where I think we run into a bit of a difference of how we felt coming out of it, where, I'm coming from someone that kept up with the series back in the day, and I'm just happy to have it back. And like, I
mm,
want that
sure.
feeling of like, okay, this is that series. Like, you didn't just make something new and slapped the name on it. Like, this is Onimusha to me. Cool. Whereas you're coming from it as someone that doesn't have that connection, and you're like, yeah, that looked neat. What, what does it do different? Like what is the reason for me to be like hype about this versus the seven other samurai games I could choose from right now?
Yeah, and I think that, and to be clear, I want to play the Onimusha games. They've been on my like backlog for a while now, and this game coming out is definitely going to expedite me playing those games. Um, I think you made a really you made a point that like that I very much just don't think is something that I guess game devs should think about when they bring back an old IP, because mainly because of just how long games take to make nowadays,
Sure.
where it's like, oh, we want to like, you know, we bring back Onimusha, and it's like, see, it's Onimusha again, and it's just like, and it's this kind of like proof of concept that like, oh, this series can still be relevant in 2025, and it's just like, dog, like, I don't need y'all to do that. I need y'all to just make a new game that like isn't like this kind of, again, this proof of concept, because the games take way too long to make. I
Mhm.
don't, it's kind of like how long it took. And honestly, it didn't probably take a super long, but like and we'll talk about it when it comes to when we talk about Resident Evil, because it is like some feelings that I have about the series is that the shift from Resident Evil 6 to Resident Evil 7,
Mhm.
and how it really feels like in certain aspects a different series, but it's still Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And granted, Onimusha didn't have like uh that luxury
There's a
of being
much
an
greater gap.
ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a much greater gap, but it very much, they could have very much been like, oh, like, so this is kind of like a proof of concept of we're trying to change things with Resident Evil. We're not really sure how people are going to feel about it. But no, like 7 came out and we're like, this is what Resident Evil is now.
Yeah.
And this is what, and y'all either are going to like it or you're not, and that it is what it is. And I think that's what this new Onimusha game needs to be. And I and I don't mean that I need like these major changes
Mhm.
from like what Onimusha was, because again, I don't know what is,
Right.
and I just don't want this kind of like like this kind of like safe return where it's like, oh, yep, this is Onimusha again, but in 2025. I like, I want a little bit more than that, I guess is the best way to explain it. And it feels a little dumb to say that, considering I don't know Onimusha,
Right.
and maybe I'm just like, oh, I like Onimusha and I just want Onimusha. I think and I really do think it's just the variety of different games where you have a similar experience where I just like want to know, hey, what is this offering that's different from all these other games?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a fair read. I absolutely do. I think at the end of the day, I just come out where, because I have that association, it's hard for me to divorce my excitement over the fact that what I saw, isn't like a one-to-one, oh, this is just exactly the same as the old games and is more of that. There absolutely are like updates and changes, and I think the combat has greater depth than we ever got on the PS2. Like again, a lot of the original combat was like you have your basic combo from spamming attack, call it a day, and then there's the ECID, which is the cool shit, but like it is a very like kind of standard repeatable trick.
Okay.
That takes time to master. And so I also think this is not the last like I think there's a reason this was a uh kind of closed experience for people to kind of get a taste of what the game's looking like, and I think there is going to be a more public facing like greater deep dive into the game before full release.
Oh yeah.
There absolutely is a lot of stuff we haven't seen, right? Like obviously, like you said, you don't even know what the souls are for, right? Whereas my brain goes, oh yeah, you collect red souls because that goes into upgrading your weapons and unlocking new abilities and stuff. But obviously, we don't know how exactly that works in this one, and maybe there's a greater degree of customization or variety. We also don't know different weapon types because we just saw him using the
Hmm.
katana, whereas a big thing in past Onimusha titles is you unlock different weapons as the game goes on. They have different properties and are better for certain situations in combat because of the elemental damage they deal, or just because this weapon hits a wide area for less damage, but so it's great for crowds. And this one is slow and high damage, so it's great for a single enemy. Um, and so I think there's a lot of additional context like that that we just need to see that's on its way eventually. Whereas this was really just more a taste of like, this is what, beginning of the game combat kind of looks like as far as the core we're working with.
Sure. Yeah. I again, this is a game I'm going to play day one.
Yeah.
I don't think like in based off of what they've shown, like I was like, cool. I like being a samurai. I like swinging my sword.
Yeah.
I just wish that we got a little bit more showing like, hey, this is like what is
Different.
it's offering that other games aren't.
Sure.
So that's where I'm at. But
Yeah.
still, like, looks pretty. Had a good time watching it. Just wish I got a little bit more. Um,
Valid.
Resident Evil Requiem. We got to watch a pre-edited version of it was basically the basically what takes place after the trailer, how the trailer ends in
Yeah.
Resident Evil Requiem, where Grace is all she's all strapped up on a stretcher of sorts.
Yeah.
She's upside down. So it's kind of like the escape uh sequence, not a sequence, but section of the game where she frees herself and then she's trying to figure out where she is and get out. How how were your thoughts on what you saw?
Uh, Honestly, so of the two, Requiem, I did walk away a little bit more mixed, and not like in a bad way. I'm
Uh-huh.
excited for it. Like I liked what I saw overall. But kind of echoing what you were saying about Onimusha, part of my reaction to it was like, yes, this is more of what we saw in 7 and 8, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I really like 7 and 8, so like I'm down for more of that. But I didn't see anything that was like, oh, this is what separates this from like what we did in those games, or here's like the new thing. It's like, yep, it's well, okay. One thing to bring up real quick, because this is a question people have. I'm sure by now you might have heard this. This game is default and recommended first person view, but you do have the ability to change to third person if you prefer. It's an option right away. That's not going to be like an eventual patch like we saw happen with other ones. Like, it's just, nope, you want first person view? Right out the gate, that is it. If you want third person, you can change it and you're good to go. Um,
Yeah, that was the tease that was basically the reveal that they had at the end of the
yeah. And
presentation.
I would say that is probably the one thing that felt like a, hey, by the way, this is a thing now. I
Yeah.
do find it interesting that, like, because literally, like, when I say first person recommended, I'm just not saying that because it's been like the thing. It literally says that, like, in the options. Like, they show opening up the options menu and it says first person view, parentheses, recommended, and then you swap it over to third person. Um, so I'm curious, like, how true that statement is in a sense. Like I'm curious like what aspects of the gameplay are maybe really built for a first person perspective and maybe don't translate as well when you're in the third person camera, or if it like affects some of the moment to moment gameplay in any kind of way. Because generally speaking, from like a effectiveness standpoint, third person is just way better for like environmental awareness. Like you know the enemy's right behind you or something, which you don't get with first person. Um, but yeah, the gameplay we saw, not only was it kind of taking place what was after the trailer, but it also felt like what would be effectively the very start of the game. Like there's probably a prologue or something beforehand. Maybe there's a tiny playable bit where you're walking around somewhere. But this felt like the moment where it's like, okay, the game is starting now. Like you don't have any gear. You're trying to find your way around this place. We're introducing mechanics. We're introducing like how lighting and stuff works. And then they introduce, effectively the Mr. X of the game, right? Like here's a big creepy looking monster and it's going to chase you around and you have to hide from it every now and then. And look, as someone who very much enjoyed Resident Evil 2 Remake, I like that mechanic. I like having like a big unstoppable force that it doesn't matter how like armed to the teeth you are, it's just going to be a thing that's going to be a problem and you have to figure out how to like not fight it too much. Um, and I will say, I dig that monster's design. I love the hulking size of it. It does this very nice. It's this very lanky kind of creature. So there's this very nice effect where, like, if you pass through a doorway trying to run away and you turn around and look at it, you'll see it having to like kind of crawl its way through the door the right amount of way. It's able to squeeze through, but it's still big and hulking and imposing within the hallway itself, which I thought was a really nice balance. Because it gives this greater sense of stature, and almost like an intimidating vibe of like, oh shit, like it can still fit through doors and it's following me. That's great, love it. Um, yeah, like it looked good. It looked good. It just didn't look like anything that was like different from what we have done so far in 7 and 8 to me.
Yeah, for me, I thought that, like, the general game looked good,
Mhm.
right? There were a lot of cuts, so we didn't get to see, like, any sort of gunplay. We didn't
Yes.
get to see anything outside of, uh, her grabbing items and holding a lighter. And but the horror elements, the suspense, like, very good. I am not a horror game guy, and I very much they definitely did a good job at making me be like, oh hell no, fuck this, like no way, dog. Um and but I do wish that we just got to see a little bit of game, some gunplay, a
Sure.
little bit of that aspect. Because they explain how, like, Grace is, um she is very, like, shy. She's very timid, but she is also an FBI agent. She is trained. She
Yeah.
is, like,
She
adept
she
at
can use a gun.
using a gun.
Yeah.
And so I wish that we saw a little bit of that in the demonstration that we got. I wish we got a little bit more story, in a sense of, like, what she is
Dealing with.
investigating,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the whole Mr. X and Nemesis, like, following you throughout a game. It For me, it just makes the game more frustrating.
Mhm.
And I know that that's kind of the point, but I'm not a big fan of that. One thing that is, like, very nitpicky. It's very nitpicky, admittedly, but it was distracting at a point.
Breathing.
Uh The breathing,
Yep.
the
Yep.
breathing, dog.
No, no,
The
I
breathing,
yeah.
the audio clips, the audio was the same thing of her, the same type of breathing over and over again, and it drove me crazy.
It
But,
it certainly
go
seemed
ahead.
like something that made sense at the very beginning, and then it was like, "Oh, she's still breathing like that," like,
Yes,
20 minutes
yes,
into this.
yes.
I feel like I'm
I
curious
just
how.
think it's not finished.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just don't think it's
I was about to say, like, I feel like honestly, I've seen that happen a few times in a few horror games where like the early trailers are very like you just oh man, you're always heavily breathing and it's oh god, I'm so scared all the time. And then you play the final version of the game and that's like how the audio sounds for the first 5 minutes and then you move on. Like it gets toned down. Um yeah, I think I chalk that up to this is early versions of gameplay and that's going to probably change a little bit by the time we see the full version. I would hope because yeah, I agree. It was a bit much. a little too over the top. And you are not the only person I've heard say that. There were definitely a few people coming out of our theater experience that were just kind of like, that breathing, huh?
Yeah,
Take a
yeah.
moment. It's okay.
It was also like really loud, and you know, it was probably it was an audio mixing thing, right? I was like, this is way louder than it needs to be too,
Well, and
versus everything
we
else.
were like in a whole theater style presentation. It was a
Hmm.
giant projector screen. There were good speakers being used. I think it would probably also balance out differently in like a home setup or something.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. But
Maybe.
again, it's a work in progress. Uh, but yeah, I'm again like Resident Evil is a series I really do want to get into. I
Hmm.
really do. I just play them and I get like halfway through and I'm just like, okay, nothing's really changing here. I'm just solving puzzles and the puzzles are fine. Like they're good, but it's just like, what's going on here? What's going on? And
I
so,
eat up every minute. I'm down for more.
and that's fine,
Yeah,
and so, I don't know. And also, like half of the games have spiders in them, and that's just
yes,
like, well,
that's a big. Oh,
that's an issue.
I forgot to bring that up during our Xbox talk. I wanted to ask how you felt about I I just made a joke while
Grounded
watching.
too.
Yeah, I was like Granted 2 where you wish arachnophobia mode was also in the trailers and not
Yeah, didn't like that. Nope,
uh
did not like the spiders. No
yeah.
good, no good there.
Uh
Um,
but yeah, like I think the big takeaway honestly, like game looks good. It looks like more of what we've seen. We didn't really get to see any action in progress. I I'm excited for it. It so far feels like something that's going to be a little bit kind of play it safey, but I also think this was a very small snippet of like the very beginning of the game, and I fully
mm,
expect to. I think there is more to learn. You know, similar to what I was saying with Onimusha, I think we're only seeing one slice, and there is enough time between now and release that there's definitely going to be some more updates.
definitely. I so just speaking for myself, like I'm personally haven't been a huge fan in general of just the shift of Resident Evil. I
Hmm.
know I was talking about like, they were willing to just do that
Sure.
for Resident Evil when we were talking about Onimusha, but like I like the third person over the shoulder aspects compared to what we've gotten in 7 and Village and now
Yes.
Requiem. But I at the very least, I'm pretty sure 7 and 8 have now gone to you can do third person, correct?
It is a an update they eventually did. Yes.
Yeah, so if I do get to those, that's cool that I don't have to that I can play it in third person the way I like. It also make the game less scary. So for me.
Yeah.
But the one question I had for you, which we did not talk about in the showcase episode, is this game has a release date,
It does.
February 27th.
Hmm.
Does that feel quick for you?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I mean, it's been like, okay, does it feel quick relative to reveal? Yes. Does it feel quick relative to how long it's been since 8? Not particularly. Like, I know 4 remake was in the mix in there, but like that kind of follows the overall pattern of how fast they've been knocking these games out. Um, yeah, it doesn't take me too off guard. Uh, yeah, that's all I got to say on that.
Okay. Um, and then lastly, we got to go hands on with Pragmata. This was re-revealed at the State of Play. Admittedly, now it's happened, we knew that we were going to play this. When Pragmata showed up at the play, we were just like, oh, we knew it was going to show up there or it was going to show up at the Summer
Yeah,
Game Fest showcase. So I was like, cool, cool. Um, and I'm super interested in this game. I think even if I didn't play it and just like saw a presentation like everyone like the other things, um I'm just more excited for this game. I'm very curious about the story and the lore. You kind of got a we kind of got like a little sense of how there's like this kind of corporate corruption that has affected the operations of this space that you're on. You didn't get a whole lot of interaction with Hugh and
Yeah,
Diana,
just the very start. Yeah.
just the very start. But it very much felt like that this was the beginning of the game. This was like very early, if not the beginning of the game.
Yes. I think
And
that was the begin like, there's probably some other cutscenes and stuff before what we saw, but that's definitely where, like,
the
gameplay
gameplay
starts.
starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically, we see this a bit in the state of play, but you are trying to shoot these robots, and these robots basically have impenetrable shells, and Diana is able to hack them to deal damage and basically make them vulnerable to gunfire. And the how you do that in real time, and this is all in real time. There's no like cuts to
Yeah.
anything. It
Nor
all
does it
happens at
slow
the same
down.
time.
There's no time
Nor
dilation
yeah, nor
either.
does it slow down.
Yeah.
Is Diana does like this hacking mini game where you have like these squares, you use the face buttons to go through to get your goal is to get to the green box. But there are blue boxes, and like later on you learn that there are other nodes that can pop up when you're hacking that will like either do more damage or lower their defense or like
Yeah.
things like that. This was like a great example of kind of what I wanted from Onimusha was like, oh, show me like
A
how
weird
the
be
gameplay
yeah.
evolves a bit. And so it's really straightforward, really simple, but also you do have these robots coming after you. And granted, they're pretty slow, but you have to kind of focus on two things at once. And the puzzles are normally pretty straightforward too, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. The pistol is like unlimited ammo, but you will pick up other weapons that are limited ammo. Like once they're gone, they're gone. You have to pick up another one eventually to get more ammo with that. Um we only got to play like 15 minutes to 20 minutes, but it was a really great first impression.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this game. I wish we had an actual release date, not just 2026. But it's exciting. I had a really great time. Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, echoing a lot of what you said, I agree with a lot of that. I think the hacking minigame, what I really enjoyed about it was, again, like we kind of said earlier, it's not like a time dilation, it's not slow down, it doesn't pause the action. You are doing this in real time while having to stay aware of other enemies. And like, yeah, most of the enemies are not like super fast, so it's like a problem. But the more enemies there are, the more hectic it can get, where you're just like, I need to pay attention and make sure this one guy's not getting too close to me on my left. It kind of makes the environments a little bit more engaging, where like when you are stuck in a small room with more enemies, it's immediately more intimidating, because while they are not super fast, they absolutely have a little bit of that like Terminator 1 vibe, where unless you break down their defenses, they're just going to walk towards you unimpeded and wreck you if you let them get too close. So I really like how that played into a bit of a multitasking kind of way, where you're having to figure out which enemy you want to hack first, and then try to like knock that out as quick as you can, and like get through the hacking minigame as efficiently as possible. And the game does give you some other tools to try and manage this a little bit. Like one of the guns you can pick up basically creates like a slow zone that brings enemies down to like a molasses crawl for a little bit. So especially in those tight quarter situations, you can be like, all right, I'm going to hit these two guys that are near each other with the slowdown, and then I'm going to look at this other guy and hack them so I can take the defenses and start blowing them apart. It creates just a nice little, I think, like constant sense of needing to prioritize who you're giving your attention to, whether that's like a weaker enemy that you can take out faster, so you want to hit them first, or focus on the guy that's literally walking towards you right now and is about to close the distance. Um, the hacking minigame, I'm very interested in seeing how it further evolves, because as you mentioned during our time, so the initial blue nodes that show up like right at the start, for each one of those that you highlight, it makes the debuff of their defenses last longer and also increase how much damage you deal to them. But then there was other ones you could unlock. So there was like a yellow node you unlocked that I think it was just that it like added a DOT
Defense.
effect or something. Um, and so if you highlighted that along your path to the green, it would add that effect. And I would have to imagine that if there are unlockable positive effects, there are probably going to be situations where like a particularly tough enemy maybe has blocks you don't want to highlight, where maybe
Yeah.
it like slows down your ability to hack, or maybe it like
Or
interrupts
has
it
some
and forces you to.
walls.
Yeah, add some walls that you have to navigate through a little bit, so you need to be a little more careful. Because like when we played in the beginning, the hacking minigame, there was not really any punishment other than the time it took. So like you could just like if you wanted to, you could just spam like circle, 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 and then X, and then like weave back and forth so you get to the green if you wanted. But there was always like a fast route to highlight all the ones you wanted to highlight. Uh, yeah, I just think it was a really neat idea of adding a fun minigame. It gave me vibes a little bit of like part of what I loved about playing Nier, where you have multiple gameplay systems that get thrown at you sometimes back to back, and you have to immediately adjust to playing a different game suddenly. And that's what's going on a bit with this, where it's like 1 second you have to play a hacking minigame, and the next second you have to play your traditional third-person shooter, which still had its own unique little things. Like the weapon limitations, I think are interesting because it played a bit into like smartly using what you have on hand against the right enemy, and they definitely try to like drive this home right away because when you first find, I think it's called the Shockwave, which is basically just a shotgun.
The
It,
shotgun,
yeah,
yeah.
it's the close range, just like fire a spread, deal a ton of damage. They first introduce that to you by putting you against an enemy that your pistol just does like fuck all damage to. Like you just are not going to take this enemy down with your pistol. And so you pick up the shockwave and just unload like twice in them and they're gone. Uh and so that's like a nice way of highlighting like, hey, maybe don't like just, use that freely all the time. Maybe you want to make sure you use that on the enemy that it calls for. And I like
Yeah.
that. I like having specific solutions and like rewarding proper balance of like resources and preparation and knowing what tool for what job kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and to be clear, based off of at least the first 15 minutes I played, like, it's not like that those weapons are scarce.
No.
Like, they're pretty, like, decently available to you if you go out of your way to explore enough. Because there are definitely, like, hidden like, so I was playing I played the full demo, and then Adriana, who was doing stuff with Smashpad, she was watching me play, and then I let her play. We had time to play, so
Yeah.
she started it and she played her own, and she found areas that I did not find.
Yeah.
And granted, I like for a lot of games, I get pretty streamlined a lot of the time.
Hmm.
That is definitely one of my
Yeah, you go to the object.
flax.
Yeah, you have the
Yeah,
objective
yeah,
point and you go for it, which
for
this game
sure.
does have. I think it was like you press square and it highlights what you're supposed to do next.
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, like even then, I don't mind like looking around and stuff like that. But I was just like, oh, I know what my objective is, and if I come across something along the way, then I come across something along the way. But I'm not like going out of my way to
Yeah. You're
find
not double
things.
checking every nook and cranny.
And there were like two or three things where I was just like, what the? Because the place is like it's decent size, but I would say it's more compact than it is big, right?
Yes.
And so I was just like, "How did you find that and I didn't?" Because it was like a small enough room where I'm like, "Oh, I feel kind of stupid. I didn't find this." So there are definitely ways where find like enough ammo for those weapons, even with the limited resources that
Yeah.
each pickup gives you.
I think what's interesting with that too is that the weapons were color coded. And it never
Yes.
came up to be an issue, but it was like, oh, the shockwave is a red weapon, and like the stasis gun was, I think I want to say a green weapon. And what that implies to me is that you only have one red weapon, one green weapon, one blue weapon at a time on top of your pistol. And so that plays a little bit of a game of like, you know, sure the weapons might be plentiful enough, but you might have a moment where you're like, oh, I have the shockwave, but here's this other red weapon, and which one of these do I want to be carrying around with me moving forward for a little bit, and when am I going to find this certain weapon type again? Uh, yeah, it's one of those things where like I feel like we just kind of saw the basic building blocks because again it was the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
But just off that snippet alone, I can already see the potential of like how much more interesting and complex some of the later game can be. Because like you throw some more enemies at me, you throw a couple that are fast in the mix that messes up your sense of prioritizing. You make the hacking minigame a little bit more frustrating on occasion by adding things like walls or like nodes you don't want to highlight because you'll be punished. Uh, I could absolutely see like late game combat getting significantly more hectic in a good way.
There was already a like just from that 15 minutes, there's definitely already a segment, an encounter with multiple robots where I wasn't even trying to be the most optimal with the hacking puzzle. I'm like, oh, I need to get to the green straight away so I can, because I got myself like cornered or something. So you definitely get into those scenarios like pretty early on, depending on if you're not aware of your surroundings.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I didn't like about this demo, the one thing. Did you time out or did you like get to where they told you to stop playing?
I got to the end of the demo,
Okay.
yes.
So the end of the demo is literally you like get to this room and you have a cutscene where like a giant mech shows up and then like, you know, it's going to be a boss fight. And then I have, the people running the booth tapping on the shoulder go like, yeah, you got to stop now, man. Wait, you can't play that part. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
You can't show me
yeah.
this
That
giant robot and tell me I can't fight it.
yeah, that
Why?
hurt. Yeah, I was just like, "Oh, cool, a boss fight. I want to see what this is like." Oh, this is where you have to stop.
It
Damn it.
it is unfinished. That's what it is. You're not allowed to fight it yet. Yeah, that was the only thing. Only thing. No, I dug it. I think the minimal story we got leaves me with a lot of questions still about how I'm gonna feel about like the writing and the plot and all that kind of stuff. Like we just didn't really get that much of a taste of that outside the very beginning, which was basically just like the setup. Like, oh, you're on a spaceship. There's robots trying to kill you. Diana's a robot girl that can hack them. Cool. Like it kind of just gives you this immediate like the situation and that's it. So, I don't know how that's all gonna build up, but the core gameplay mechanic stuff going on, absolutely
Fundamentals
has
are really good.
really good
Really good.
fundamentals. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on what we talked about with Capcom?
One random thing I forgot to bring up during Resident Evil talk, and I should have brought this up when you asked about if that's a short turnaround time. One thing I didn't think about. So after playing Pragmata, I actually did a little interview with some of the Capcom folks. So you'll probably see me pop up on socials, giving some thoughts on Pragmata. But
Oh,
when I was
okay,
doing
cool.
that, at the same time as that, they also interviewed Sphere Hunter, and she had brought up while talking about just everything we saw at Capcom, like, oh. I also see what you guys are doing, revealing Resident Evil 9 9 months before its release date, which is also the 30th anniversary. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, that's actually, huh? Yeah, that's
that's a
that
coinky dink.
that seems intentional.
Yeah, yeah.
So shout out to her for noticing that because I did not do that math in my head while watching this all go down. Uh, yeah, look like I think all of like Pragmata actually I think was the one we're the most overall positive on because we had hands on with it and it's something just very interesting and different as opposed to like a new entry in a pre-established thing. But all three of
Mhm,
these, I overall feel pretty good about. I understand some of your hang-ups with Onimusha and whether or not that's going to like appeal to new people or not, if it's going to do anything to stand out enough. Um, but I think at the end of the day, the worst case scenario for it is it's going to be like still a solid, polished game. Like at least from what we saw, I'm not expecting it to suddenly be like bad. You know what I mean? Like at
mhm.
minimum, it's going to be solid. I think. Um, yeah, good stuff. We'll see.
We will see indeed. That's it, everybody. That's our thoughts on what Capcom had to show us at SGF. We recorded this one separately from our other SGF Playdays impressions because this one had an embargo. So we thought it would be best to separate this for its own little bonus episode. But thank you all for listening. You can follow me on socials at Camp Final Mix. You can follow Kevin over at Kevin Kenson. And until next time, catch you later.
Later.